Hey, this is Carnell, and today's topic is about building a system for gaming now versus upgrading a computer in the future, and what the benefits of spending a little bit more now and having to upgrade in like 7 years is going to be kind of what kind of looks like in the timeline of minimum specs. So, I mean, as you know, games have a minimum spec for processor, RAM, and graphics card and all that stuff. So at some point, you're going to have to upgrade some component or another depending on what the minimum specs for the game you want to play are at. Right now, we're kind of at this weird crossroads because the AM5 is not going to be minimum spec for like 7 years. And it's not going to start hitting like the 7600X for at least 7 years. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at a couple of builds. They both have 4060 Ti's just for the sake of comparing the processors by themselves and the prices of those builds. So the first one is a 5800X, so it's kind of a upper end of an AM4 platform, and it is $827. The other system is a 7600X, and it is 1064. So let's do some calculations here. So we've got 1064 minus 827. So we are spending an extra $237 for this system, right? Now, what is the system? This is a 7600. So now we're going to look at the minimum specs and how they generally increase over time. Usually it's like, let's just say it starts at 3600, which I think some of the new games are like 3000 series processors. So let's just say it 3600 this year. So now you've got 3600, 3700, 3800. Sometimes they'll go to the 900, but they'll usually start going down into the lower end of the next gen. So now you've got 5600, 5700, 5800, and once again it goes to the next generation. Well, that's a 7000 series. So that's a platform switch in 7 years from now. So yes, you could get 6 years out of this system, but if you spend the extra $237, you will still be at that minimum spec in that 7 years, right? So now you basically have everything you need for that seventh year, right? For $237. When that becomes the minimum spec, you could run with it for a year or two and see how your mileage varies with the other components like the graphics card are concerned. But then what you want to look at is what does it cost to get a newer processor? So let's go ahead and look at this. So this is the $495 that it costs to get a motherboard, CPU, and RAM for AM5 over this. So when you, in that 7 years, you would be replacing those three components and then having the cooler will work on it, or there's a similar cooler that's probably about the same price. That would be on the $400 range for what you would be spending, right? So that's $400. What does even today, like yesterday or something like that, the 9000 series came out. What does that cost? So let's go look at a 9600X is $279, right? So let's just say this is the price difference between buying the 7600X system. So let's say in 7 years, you spend another $279. So you have now spent, if I go back to this, which is $400 to $516. So you have spent a total of $116 to upgrade in 7 years, and you will get another 3 years out of your system for that. And so now you're at 10 years. So now you have a potential purchase in the future, and the prices will drop, so it will get cheaper. And plus, there'll be other ones available because AM5 will be supported in the next 3 years. There'll probably be a different or a better model that might be the same price or cheaper top end than a 7600X or the 9600X that is now available that will run better and give you even more life, right? So you have to look at it that way. What happens in the 7 years and what are the pricing kind of generally going to be? It's kind of a good idea to go for AM5 right now and spend that extra money because you're not going to have to upgrade as much stuff in the future in that 7 year time period instead of having to buy motherboard, CPU, RAM, as well as your graphics card at some point will probably have to be upgraded. That extra money, $116, will be spent on a new processor instead of a whole basically main system upgrade, right? The major components won't have to be touched for 10 years. So that's kind of what I wanted to point out is that it seems like a lot of money, but really it's that $200 is not very much. How much was that? It was $237. So if we take $237 and we divide by 7 years, that's $33.86 per year that you would be upgrading over those 7 years, or at least saving up for, to put towards your other stuff, right? So if you put aside 40 bucks every year until that 7 year period's up, you will be able to buy a new processor and uh, you won't be stuck in a minimum spec. Now you will have something beyond the minimum spec for another few years. And then at that point, yeah, maybe there'll be a new platform and you'll have to upgrade. But we're talking 10 years down the future. In 10 years, a lot of things can change. So that's just kind of how you look at this pricing and upgrade from a processor's perspective because of the platform switches that are currently in place for the price difference of what you can buy. So I like this functional builds post. It has a couple AM5 systems, but a lot of these are like 12th gen Intel and AM4 platforms. It's kind of time to just remove them and start putting AM5s in this year, just because it's not really cost effective. But I'm leaving them in there for now because yes, some people are under extreme budgets and that's all they can afford, so they're just kind of there. But if you really can push that extra budget, it is going to be worth your while and time and effort to spend the extra money now so you're not spending like the cost of the computer again in 7 years pretty much. So, I mean, we're talking like a $200 difference of basically rebuilding your entire machine in the future. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to put out for today. I hope this helps kind of explain to people that they're just looking to build a machine on what you have to look for. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys again.